Alright, we're now going to take a look at the shelf settings, and to do that we're going to only modify the settings for a cabinet that's already in the list. So we're going to start off by first just looking at what we have for the basic shelves here. So we're talking about the shelf holes that are being applied here, and then also how to size the shelves accordingly. So we'll just right click on the cabinets in the list, change cabinet settings. You could permanently change these settings as just the same by going to Tools, Settings, or Cabinet Settings, selecting the cabinet type that you want to apply these settings to as default. So I'm not wanting to change my default settings and only modifying a cabinet that's in the list. I'm right clicking and selecting Change Cabinet Settings. So the shelf settings is we have shelf spacing. The shelf spacing of 12, that is meaning 12 inches, and that is used to determine how many shelves the cabinet's going to get when you enter it in. By having it set to 12, it's going to give us enough shelves to have at least 12 inches in between each shelf. So if we want less shelves for an entered cabinet, increase that number. If you want more shelves for the entered cabinet, to have it automatically calculate for you, you would decrease that number. The shelf hole spacing is the distance from center to center between each individual hole. As we just saw, that default, or what we have set, is 1.25 inches. The holes that we saw in the nested view there was each hole center to center was spaced at 1.25 inches. If I increase that to 3 and re-nest, we will now see that the distance from center to center is now set to be 3 inches. Reset that back down to 1.25 inches. The hole depth is how deep that hole is going to get drilled. In this case, it's going to be a 1/2 inch deep. You could change that if you want to. We're not going to be able to see a change on the nested view. The shelf hole diameter is the diameter of that shelf hole is going to be. The default setting is 0.197, which is the equivalent to 5 millimeters. The hole inset from the front and hole inset from the back is the distance that row of shelf holes is set in from the front edge of the cabinet. Just to show an exaggeration of here, I'm going to enter in number 5 to be inset from the front. We'll close that setting, re-nest, and see what that setting affects. So from the front edge of the cabinet in 5 inches is where that first row of holes is going to be placed. And the same thing for our back inset was set at 2 inches from the back side of the cabinet to the center of the row of holes was set to be 2 inches. Change that back to 2. The use 32 millimeter system, if checked, the inset from backside setting is going to be ignored, and the back set of holes is going to be set back the distance based on your drawer brand settings. So you'll be able to use a row of system holes. The back hole will automatically be lined up for the selected drawer brand hole that you have selected under drawer hole settings. The distance to top hole and the distance to last is just that. How far from the start of the holes, from the bottom to the top, and from the top to the bottom. So we're going to set both of those to 1 and re-nest. And we can see from the top edge to the first row is 1 inch, or close to it. Since we have a set spacing here and we're trying to control the spacing from top to bottom and bottom to top, it's going to be plus or minus half the hole spacing. So if we have an 1.25 inch spacing, it could either be 1 5/8 to 5/8 spacing here, just to keep them equally spaced between those two settings. The next setting that we have to look at is the side clearance. Side clearance is what is used to determine the width of the shelf. If we set this to 0 on a 30-inch wide cabinet, our shelf width is going to be made 28.5 inches. Most of the time you want it to be slightly smaller to allow a little room for the shelf to drop in there, or in some cases you might be using some sort of bracket, shelf bracket system on the inside that stands off the inside of the cabinet by 1/4 inch on each side, a total of 1/2 inch. So you might want to add, put in 0.52 or 0.53 here to allow more clearance for any kind of bracket system that you have in there. You might be using a different kind of shelf clip or shelf standard. The depth clearance is basically the same as the side clearance. It's what is used to adjust the depth of the shelf. The hole sets are used to drill a set of holes every so many inches. In this case, we have our hole sets to 0. I'm going to change that to 3 and have it drill every 6 inches. And now what we're going to end up with is a set of 3 holes every 6 inches. Now notice the bottom shelf set is placed way down below. Wasn't equally spaced. We have full control over where this is placed as we enter it in the cabinet. So what I did is when we enter in a cabinet width, we have the shelf holes over here, total of 2 shelves, and right now they are equally spaced, 10 inches up from the bottom, then 20 inches. We could place that if you had say a mullion door that has glass on it. You need to have the shelf line up exactly where the mullion is, which may not be centered on the cabinet. We could change that to be 12 inches up from the bottom, or even 9 inches up, and I'll add that and view what that looks like. Again, we'll have to change our settings. Drill a set of 3 holes every 6 inches. And there we are. The last setting to take a look at is going to check the math for us to make sure that it's a setting that is, I think, very rarely used, but a few requested it. And what it is this check math, the top and bottom hole spacing. What this means is it's going to give us equally spaced, make sure that our cabinet height is divisible by our shelf spacing plus the distance from top to distance to bottom. So for this case, if I enter in a cabinet that is 30 wide, 30 high, and click add to the bottom, it's telling me here that the math doesn't add up. The closest height is going to be 30.25 inches to have that equally spaced system work out. If I choose yes, it just changes that for me there, and I could click add to that cabinet and it'll add it there. That is the basics to the shelf settings.